Let's now shift our attention to the other big story that we are tracking on WION, where the World Health Organization team, which is probing into the origins of the coronavirus, is planning to scrap the interim report on its recent mission to China. Now, according to the report by the Wall Street Journal, the WHO's team is planning to scrap its interim report amidst mounting tensions between Beijing and Washington over the investigation. Meanwhile, an international group of scientists has written an open letter calling for a new investigation. They've said that the WHO team, which completed a trip to Wuhan last month, had insufficient access to adequately probe people and possible sources of the coronavirus. And they were too dependent on Chinese scientists who may have had limited scientific independence. No information was immediately available about the reasons for the delay in publishing the findings of the WHO-led mission, but WHO maintains that it still plans to release the full report in the coming weeks and that only the summary report has been scrapped. Now, China has refused to give raw data on the early COVID-19 cases to the WHO team probing into the origins of the pandemic, potentially complicating efforts to understand as to how the outbreak actually began in the first place. The probe has been plagued by delays and concerns over access and bickering between Beijing and Washington, which has accused China of hiding the extent of the initial outbreak and has also criticized the terms of the visit, under which the Chinese experts conducted the first phase of the research. The team, which arrived in China in January and spent about 4 weeks looking into the origins of the outbreak, was limited to just visits that were organized by their Chinese hosts, and they were prevented from coming in contact with the community or interacting with community members due to health restrictions, according to the Chinese administration. All right, now, to give us more perspective in terms of this controversy or this interim report by the WHO's search team, we're joined in by Nikolai Petrovsky, who's a professor of medicine at the Flinders University in Australia. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast on WION. And now this is a bit of an interesting back and forth where there are now talks that the interim report that was put out by this probing team, which visited the epicenter of the outbreak in Wuhan, potentially could be scrapped. Your first reaction on this, sir?
Well, I think that there was always an undue expectation on this panel as to what they could achieve. I think in reality, this was to look at public health aspects and improve relations between the WHO, the international community and Chinese scientists. I don't believe this panel was ever empowered or in a position to even start to address the question of the origins of this virus. So, I think it's good that they've taken a backward step because I think it would be a big error if they tried to make any form of conclusion given the limited data that they have access to.
Now, it is a fact that the Chinese administration was not allowing this probe team by the WHO to actually go and access and independently interact with the very first patients who contracted COVID-19. Is that a cause of concern? Is that what you've raised in this open letter that you've written?
No, so look, this letter is much more general about that. It's not about finger pointing. It's not about, the Chinese government's management of the pandemic. It's about the open scientific question, which is, today, over a year after the start of this pandemic, we're no closer to getting to the bottom of where this virus actually started from. And that's the core question that, as a group, we're trying to get everyone to focus on is we know no better today than we did a year ago. Where and how did this pandemic start?
So how do you think should be the approach of the WHO in proceeding further in finding out as to how this pandemic actually started?
So we don't actually think that the WHO is necessarily the right organisation to undertake such an investigation. The WHO is a public health body. China, amongst other countries, is a member organisation of WHO. So WHO is not as most people would conceive it, an independent organisation. It has to be responsive to its member organisations, and its primary focus has to be public health. Its role is not to be a detective or to undertake forensic examinations of how this virus may have developed, whether from natural causes or from some form of human intervention. So we really don't believe that the WHO should be put in that position, because they're not the right body to be undertaking such an inquiry.
Professor, the obvious question then would be, who do you think should be the obvious body to actually carry out with this investigation to find out about the origins of the coronavirus pandemic?
So one possibility has been put forward is some form of committee formed under the United Nations. But, you could take the perspective that what this pandemic has identified is we don't have the right organisations or instruments in the event of needing to undertake such an inquiry. And so maybe looking forward, we have to create some new organisations and structures to allow us to undertake such an inquiry in a properly independent and scientific manner.
All right, now this open letter that you're a signatory of, it is titled Call for a Full and Unrestricted International Forensic Investigation into the Origins of COVID-19. Now, full and unrestricted access into Wuhan and also in the places where the very first cases of infections were found. Do you think, realistically speaking, this is something that the Chinese administration would be open to?
Well, I think we have to ask them. Obviously this does touch upon national rights to autonomy, which every country exercises, not just China. And so in this case, no one can force, I guess, China to be party to this investigation. They have to be willing to do so. So we're certainly hopeful that with the right encouragement, that China and any other countries that may have information that would help find the source of this virus would be willing to participate. But as I say, we don't have any current instruments that would force a country to voluntarily participate in such an investigation.
All right, Professor, and my last question to you is, WHO has said that it is not scrapping the full report. It intends to actually make public the full report in the coming weeks. Do you have any reservations over that?
Of course, as I say, I don't think the mandate of WHO was to address the full question of the ultimate origins of this virus, and therefore I hope that their report, they stay within their restricted mandate and don't attempt to answer questions for which they don't have access to the full data.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Nikolai Petrovsky, for joining us and getting us all those insights into this story. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.